All right, so welcome back. We talked a little bit about office space a minute ago. Now we're going to go into industrial space, the fundamentals of industrial space. And like the office space, industrial space has obviously different subcategories of industrial. Now, personally, between you and me, if I were to pick a specialty, this is I really enjoy industrial space, and I don't know why. I think it's maybe just because people don't like it, or I don't know a lot of them, and I tend to be a contrarian. And yeah, I know a lot of you guys know me. I just like to do crap because nobody else wants to do it. I don't know. That's how I got started in this whole thing anyway. But industrial space seems to be more fun and interesting, and maybe it's because it's of the companies that typically use industrial space I like a lot more. You know, not big on attorneys, not big on accountants. Not that I just don't deal with them. I deal a lot more with manufacturing, it seems like, and because of that, I end up doing a lot of industrial space. So let's classify some of the categories for office or industrial space. You got heavy manufacturing, you've got light manufacturing, you've got flex space, and then we've got R&D space, and we'll talk a little bit about those. Heavy manufacturing, these are the types of properties that are heavily customized with machinery for the end user, all right, and usually require substantial renovation to repurpose this for another tenant. Let's think of GE or on the east side of Indianapolis. For those of you, my grandmother worked at GE there, and it was a big industrial plant. It took a lot of major repurposing to get in, and now you've got like dark armies and, you know, other people in there. But it wasn't just something where you spend, okay, let's spend a couple $100 and put some new walls up. No, there was major costs. And there's one down on Hurricane Road in Franklin. And I cannot remember the plant, but I had a client that moved into one portion of it, and you know there was a lot of equipment they had to move to rent the space out. So I'm sure that they probably spent a pretty penny just in moving equipment. So that's the heavy manufacturing. Right below that, you've got light manufacturing. And these structures are usually simpler than the heavy manufacturer. They're typically easier to be reconfigured. Storage, product assembly, office space. Park 100, buddy of mine worked for one of those novelty companies, and one of the things that Fred did was put together those little stupid flashing pins that went on your shirt. If you've ever been to a bar and Budweiser was having a specialty and you bought so many Buds, you got the little pin that went on your shirt where the word Bud flashed, or you know what I mean? And the reason I know that one is because that's the one that sticks out. They had to manufacture those. That would be an example of light manufacturing. They put them together and assembled them in this little flex space, and we'll talk about flex. So let me call it this little light industrial space. The buddy of mine was just talking about James Noah, in that where they took the computers apart and used this new method to drain all the metals out of the plastic. They could separate it in their light industrial Park 100 space. That would be light industrial. All right. Bulk warehousing, sometimes you hear that called distribution. Another term for it is fulfillment. Those are very common. These are very large properties. And I'm talking like up to 1 million square feet under roof. The Phoenix Group over here on 31, you know, almost straight through from where we're at right now. You know, not 31, the other side, Graham Road. You go down Main Street and go over there. There's that fulfillment or warehousing space. There's one down in Franklin near the exit. These are very large, where a distribution center, like where a Walmart truck might come in and then unload, and then they divide it into certain, well, okay, these stores are going to Arkansas and these stores are going to Mississippi, so they will then reload into new trucks and take them that way. FedEx is a great example. UPS, those would be bulk warehousing. Plane comes in, they unload the plane, they separate the packages out that go out to the drivers to a different area. That would be a good distribution or a bulk warehousing type of scenario. Now, flex space is a term that is kind of a little of a catch-all, and a lot of times this seems to be a new buzzword. All flex space is, imagine, if you will, taking one big white box and you're splitting it so that the front portion is office and a back portion is light assembly or distribution or something like that. And the reason that the word flex comes in is because the way the room is built and designed, you can flex the size of your office to be bigger and reduce some of your back room portion, or vice versa. Typically your front's air conditioned, your back's not. All of a sudden we've got more business, less front office space, so we're going to move that wall forward and lose an office space but gain another 100 square feet of space in the back to store more materials because we got stuff coming in. We have flexed it out. The NFL does this all the time. You've ever heard the term where they flex the football game to Sunday, the night game? Well, what they mean is they moved it, and that's where this term flex space comes from. Because they have a portion of it divided into one office and warehouse, and the flex allows you to move that wall so that you can increase one over the other. R&D space, this is another funny term. This is a term that originally originated in Silicon Valley. It's very similar to flex, where they're going to have office or research and development, and not like biological research and development when this term came about. More like programming. So you've got guys up front doing this and guys in the back that are building stuff. So that's usually what we mean R&D. Flex is the most common term that I hear a lot now. If you're not dealing with any kind of manufacturing. You've got the heavy manufacturing, you've got light manufacturing, then most people get into just calling everything else a flex, because theoretically the way things are built now, they can flex those walls to increase or decrease office space and the other as needed, all right? Now, once again, just like in the office, industrial has some other terms, and this is where sometimes I get in trouble with students, because I want to try and teach too much, and I don't want to inundate you, but there are some terms that are used in industrial that are very important to equipment movement. So you've got the storage, stacking, packing, racking, and trafficking. We got to stack, rack, pack, and mack. And these are terms that once you get in the industrial business that you use, and that's why specificity is very important. Because if you're a multifamily guy and all of a sudden you start dealing with some industrial property or a manufacturer and you don't know to ask certain things, you may be doing a disservice, which is how we started this whole conversation off with. One of the things that's important to some people is clear height. How high can I stack crap? Because that may be important, especially in distribution. We talk about, I'm going to rent square footage. So I've got 40 feet by 25 feet. That's 1,000 square foot, all right? But wait a minute. What happens if the ceiling is 40 foot tall? Now I'm dealing with cubic feet. That means I can stack a whole bunch of stuff in that 1,000 square foot, as opposed to 10-foot ceilings. 40-foot ceilings, I can stack 4 times as much. So I can hold 4 times as much in the same footprint. Everybody get what I'm at? It's still 1,000 square foot footprint, but now 10-foot ceilings would be 10,000 cubic feet, whereas 40 would be 40,000 cubic feet. I can store 4 times as many boxes of stuff. So that becomes important when dealing with a distribution client. It's not always square footage. It could be cubic footage, which is based on clear height. 10 foot, 12 foot, 16 foot clear height. Are there trusses that hold the metal roof up? Is there fire sprinklers hanging down? Because if the fire sprinkler's coming down, that becomes your clear height. because you can't knock the fire sprinkler head off. Well, you could, but you'd probably lose your fork trucking job. So clear height becomes an issue. Span. How much span is there? Think of football stadium. That's a hellacious clear span because there's no beams holding that ceiling up, which limit the amount of space or my traffic of fork trucks inside the industrial property. If I've got beams, which goes with the next one, beam distance, how close are the beams? Are they 12 inches or are they 20 feet? Because that's going to define how much I can put between them. You got a skid that's 3 foot by 3 foot. All right, so if I've got beam width of, let's say, 3, 6, 9, if I've got beam that's 10 feet apart, I'm actually losing a foot of space because I can put 3 of them in there, but I can't put 4 of them. So if I have 7 or 8 beams across and I lose a foot on every one, that's 7 to 10 feet. That's 2 more pallets times my 10 foot. I could be losing a large number of cubic feet in my distribution center simply because the beam space was different. And that's what I'm talking about, and that's why this becomes important for you guys to understand when you go into a specialty, things like that. I meant, oh, big deal. What's the difference between 10 feet apart and 9 feet apart? Could be a whole bunch of stuff. If you're the distribution guy, and I'm running on my business on margins, and I'm now losing 2 pallets of storage simply because the beams were a foot off, or 3 pallets, or the ceiling height's wrong, or it's got sprinklers hanging down, or whatever, those all become important with the industrial space. And we haven't even gotten into the environmental issues with industrial. Typically because heavy manufacturing uses a lot of equipment. It's not even on my list there, as you can see. For those of you guys watching the monitor or those at home, we didn't even get into the industrial, and I mean the environmental, and that's a whole separate class in itself. You've got environmental issues with industrial space, probably don't have them with office space. Why? Because office deals with pens and erasers, and paper clips. Industrial space, you're dealing the heavy manufacturing. Now you've got machine oils and solvents and gasoline and trucks and motor oils and all of that. So we haven't even touched on that, and that's a whole separate course in itself. All right? All right. Before we move to retail, any questions on industrial space? Am I doing that good? All right.